Sir. Today we are again talking about your book, The Revolution Shed Their Blood for India's Independence, Part 2. So
हाँ जी
today we are going to discuss about the next very important revolutionary and martyr, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
हाँ जी
So uh, you may kindly throw some light on about the brief life of Netaji Bose and how he
हाँ
contributed till his death towards India's independence.
हाँ जी This chapter is most romantic chapter. This shows, uh, uh, as I had told you earlier, when after Bhagat Singh was hanged on March 30, 1931, a conference was held in Amritsar on 8th and 9th April 1931. So the Subhash Chandra Bose had reached Amritsar and had made a very good speech regarding the revolutionaries. He said many Bhagat Singh are required to get the country released from the shackles of the British government. So far as the personal life of how he started, Subhash Chandra Bose, the reader would enjoy reading it. He was born on January 1897, and he was selected in PCS in the ICS in open competition. After Jallianwala Bagh incident had taken place, he had written a letter to the British government to delete his name from the list of ICS and ask them to give us the amount which you have paid me as honorarium so that I would deposit the same. So he was highly impressed by the great people like Swami Vivekananda or Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, C.R. Das. He had worked as executive officer of Calcutta. He was elected unopposed as Congress president in 1938 for Haripura Congress session. And next term he fought against the candidate put up by Mahatma Gandhi. He won that also. And that defeat was considered by Mahatma Gandhi as a personal defeat. The real facts would be known to the reader after he reads the book. Then he had undergone imprisonment for 10 times. And for the 11th time, he was imprisoned in April 1930. Then he went on hunger strike and he was shifted to house arrest. But very people was left at his house. But then the idea propped up in the mind of Netaji that he should go out of the country and fight the British rulers from outside as the clouds of Second World War were going. Second World War was already going on. So he stopped taking the food in the open room and asked his family people, to keep the dinner and the window, and he would take himself. And he started growing uh,
Yes, beard,
mustaches and that what you call dadi. So
beard,
virtually
beard, beard and mustache.
beard,
Beard.
beard, Hanji. So he became a Maulvi uh, on January 17, 1931. He left his house. 1941, he left his house when his nephew was asked to bring a vehicle. In spite of the fact that the vigilance people were there, he escaped there from the room. and went towards, first of all, this Dalhousie. Dalhousie, he reached Dalhousie, and then from there to Kabul, ultimately reached Kabul. Kabul and Afghanistan, they ultimately reached Samarkand, where recently our Prime Minister had gone for a meeting of SCO. From there, he reached Russia, and from Russia, he got the train and then reached Germany. He reached Germany on April 3, 1941. The British were surprised when he addressed the nation, and he, for the first time, he called Mahatma Gandhi as Rashtrapita, or father of the nation. So he created a federation there in Germany.
One question comes to mind. He had differences with Mahatma Gandhi,
Yes, yes.
and still he called him father of the nation. Why?
Yes, that's right, because considering his, he had grown in grandeur in 19, when the Jallianwala Bagh incident taken place. Thereafter, Mahatma Gandhi emerged one of the top leaders of the nation. And his policy was followed by everybody except by the revolutionaries. Then Mahatma Gandhi had given a non-violent, non-cooperation movement in 1920. Even revolutionaries had joined his conference, his movement. But when the Chora Chori incident, Mahatma Gandhi withdrew his movement. Then the revolution thought that there is nothing in Mahatma Gandhi, we have to follow our own way. So that way, Mahatma Gandhi had emerged as a very big personality of India, who was recognized even in British and international level also. Although his policy was non-violent, not to the liking of the revolutionaries. So he created a federation there, and he married his PA and secretary, Scheikel, named Scheikel.
Mm.
And he told the German people that whosoever prisoners were taken over by them by fighting the British, they would join his federation. They would become freedom fighters for Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to fight against the British people. So many people, it has grown very wide, and thousands of people had gathered in that movement. But he met Hitler also at that time. And ultimately, it occurred to him that it is very difficult to fight the British while sitting in Germany. It is better if he travels to Japan, because Japan was virtually, there was a sea between India and Japan, and therefore there was not much difficulty, because Singapore had also was also won over by Japan. That was also under the depopulation, under control of Japanese. So ultimately, the German people sent the Pandubi, what you call it,
Submarine.
submarine. Hanji?
Submarine.
हाँ, oh, and at that time also he had kept himself by Japanese name, and kept himself to himself alone. Uh, he reached Japan in 43, April 43, and there that Ras Bihari Bose, he had already reached there and had started the Indian Independence League there. So General Mohan Singh had started the uh, Indian National Army, Azad Hind Fauj, but it was not being controlled by General Mohan Singh.
Mhm.
So some people were coming and going, and he invited Subhash Chandra Bose to address the INA people. So he addressed, in the first address, uh, Subhash Bose's speeches were very wonderful and very inspiring. So July 5, 1943, he gave the slogan to Delhi,
Mhm.
keeping the same in view. Some other associations had given it to France, to Germany. On the same pattern, he had given the call to the INA to Delhi. Matlab, and he was welcomed. He frankly told the Azad Hind Fauj people that they should be determined to fight for independence of India. And if you are a man of a coward heart, then you leave it, give it to us only. Then ultimately he assumed the role of uh,
And he had established this provincial government of Free India also.
that was recognized by the Japan.
Uh-huh.
That was recognized by Japan, and as a foreign minister and prime minister of provisional prime minister of India, he had visited Andaman's jail also
Okay.
on 30th December, 29th and 30th December 1943. And from there also he had given the slogan. He was liked very much by the people of the Andamans and Nicobar Islands.
At that time,
And
Britishers were not there.
they were there,
Acha.
but they were uprooted by the Japanese people.
Okay, okay, okay.
They were made prisoners
Oh,
because this Japanese government had and they handed over to India as a free India,
okay.
part of free India.
Mhm.
So ultimately, when he took over the command of the Azad Hind Fauj for the first time, he wore this uniform, military uniform, for the first time.
And
And
why Japanese might have helped Subhash Chandra Bose?
because both are fighting against the British. Japan was also fighting against the British, and Subhash Bose was also fighting against the British.
So they consider a considerable force to that.
Considerable force because these people INA had running into thousands,
Mhm.
and Netaji created a Rani Jhansi regiment also.
Okay.
And the slogan of Jai Hind was given by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose for the first time in Germany.
What was this Rani Jhansi regiment? This consisted of females?
Rani Jhansi was a warrior of 1857 war.
No, no, that's okay. But what was this regiment? Did it consist of only women?
No, not women only.
Okay.
It was a photograph, and in that Rani Jhansi regiment, many people were also there, but they
Mhm.
were led by a woman.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
They were led by a woman who was considered to be under the name of Rani Jhansi regiment.
So it was
So,
different from INA.
no, it was a part of the INA.
Acha, okay.
It was one of the regiments of the INA.
Regiment.
Uh,
Okay. Got it
uh,
now. Okay.
uh. So when he was fighting, ultimately, when fighting continued, he won over Burma also.
Mhm.
And ultimately, the forces of Azad Hind Fauj reached Manipur, Imphal. They
Okay.
reached up to Imphal.
Mhm.
At that time, the Americans had thrown bomb on the Japanese cities, and Japan has surrendered. So he advised Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to come back immediately and leave this place. So he was not willing to do it, but when he received message after message, even even the forces of Azad and the Fauj also requested him to leave. And while leaving, he gave the final speech on 16 August 1945 that India shall be free and before long. So ultimately, Subhash was left that place. Ultimately, on August 23rd, 1945, the Japanese government declared that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose has died in the air crash on 18th August 1945. So everybody believed that he has died, but nobody knew what has happened to him. Otherwise, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose considered Nehru as his worst enemy. So, because Nehru also knew that he is alive, that is why he was keeping vigilance over the family of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, so that he could catch over any letter received from Netaji. So, Pradeep, there is a wonderful story. The reader would found it absolutely miracle in Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So there was one Sani. He was in Roped because Roped people were transferred to Nicobar Island. And this VP Sani in Roped had created a munch relating to the uh, survival of or tracing out of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He had been writing letter to the government of India to institute inquiry where Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose had gone. The British themselves had also conducted 4 or 5 inquiries by sending the commission uh, in Tapai, present Taiwan, to find out if Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is alive or dead. But they reached the conclusion that he is dead. So Nehru didn't agree to that. But Khosla Commission was constituted by Indira Gandhi in 1970. So Khosla Commission was appointed as the names were demanded from CGI. He gave the name of Justice Khosla, and Khosla accepted it. But Khosla, although reached the conclusion, he held inquiry in this Taiwan also and Japan also, but ultimately, halanki he said that he went to the mortuary also, but there was no record of regarding Netaji's burning or uh, something like that.
Cremation.
Nor there was any entry in the register. Uh, but some ashes were given in a dibba, which were kept in the temple, Buddha temple at in Japan. So Khosla also says that when Pradhan Mantri Prime Minister Nehru
Sir, what happened to that plane in which he was traveling?
actually no such incident had taken place.
No, where that plane went away.
Actually, that theory was created fictitiously.
Okay, there was no plane that took off.
Which took off or which was a car accident.
Okay.
Or which, because the subsequent findings, when the Khosla Commission was constituted in 1970, he said that yes, crash had taken place, Netaji had died.
So how they came to know that a crash had happened? How they came to know?
Who?
Anybody that how that plane has crashed?
That is why I am saying that Japan government had said on 3 August, 5 days after the alleged accident,
Okay.
they released the statement that he had died in the air crash.
Okay.
So Khosla, although visited that place also and the record, considered, examined the statement of witnesses, but many believing ultimately he reached the conclusion that Netaji had died in that crash, and his ashes lying in the temple are that of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. But at the same time, Khosla wrote, when Nehru visited Japan and he reached that temple, Buddha temple, and recorded a note, he didn't write that very sorrow that Netaji has died or something like that. He said Buddha had given a peaceful living but that is all. Matlab, Khosla resolved that the writings of Nehru did not hint towards the demise of Netaji in the air crash. But
is that possible that he might have been imprisoned in India itself somewhere?
no, there is no question of any imprisonment because when lastly departed Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the last speech on 16 August, he told his constituent, you may survive, we may not, but India shall be free and before long. So therefore, 2 years after, the country become independent. So therefore, imprisonment of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in India didn't arise. But because Khosla Commission had reached the conclusion that yes, air crash had taken place, Netaji had died, ashes lying in the that temple are of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
Acha, he certified that ashes are there.
Ashes were, everybody is saying ashes are there.
Acha.
Even now, the subsequent commission also admitted it. There is no dispute about it. But the question is, whose ashes those are? Acha, then when Atal Bihari Vajpayee became government, they appointed the Mukherjee Commission to find out whether the air crash theory is correct or not. He reached the conclusion that no air crash had taken place.
Sure.
The ashes lying in the temple, Buddha temple, are not of Netaji. He also concluded that Netaji had already escaped Japan before the British occupied it. So therefore, these findings, then one Bhagwan, Gumnami Baba alias Bhagwan Ji, he was living in Faizabad, which is now Ayodhya. So many people said that he is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So ultimately, the relatives of Subhash Chandra Bose, they filed a writ petition in Allahabad High Court. They allowed it and appointed Justice Sahai as the commission of inquiry. So that commission ultimately, because one set of teeth was lying in the room of Bhagwan Gumnami Baba, they compared it with the parental side also, maternal side also. They said, no, they didn't tally, therefore it is not of that. But the letters which were written by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose as Gumnami Baba, that handwriting was identified by an American expert, document expert. He said that this is the same signature by the same person who was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and who is a Gumnami Baba. Is one of the same person has signed it. Although Sahai Commission also held that Gumnami Baba was not Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, but the characteristics of the person of Gumnami Baba given by Sahai Commission exactly point out that Gumnami Baba was none other than Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So
And when Gurnami Baba was identified, in which year?
He was not identified. He was examined. The facts were examined in 1915 or 1900 maybe. This
1915.
हाँ, 2015. 2015.
So he was alive in 2015.
No. He was not alive. The findings were given.
So
Otherwise,
anybody saw him, Gurnami Baba?
many people. There was a doctor. He used to attend to Gumnami Baba when there were one lady. She was known as her name was Kushalya or something. she went to a doctor to call him uh, for medical treatment of this Gumnami Baba. So that doctor said to her, his children, that he is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So daughter-in-law of that doctor, she insisted that you must take us there to see that Gumnami Baba. He took it after taking permission from Gumnami Baba, and they were made to sit in the one room. Gumnami Baba used to keep a curtain where he was living and where the visitors were coming. So he was not visible to everybody. He was keeping himself under cover. So when the daughter-in-law of that doctor came and sat there, Nami Baba took it, his specs, fitted his specs like this, and told that, look here, am I Subhash Chandra Bose? So, but they were satisfied that yes. Acha, one thing more which the High Commission gave, that 23rd January of every year, he used to keep it to himself. He was critical of the government also. He was known, he knew Hindi, Bengali, English language, all these languages he knew. He used to read, he used to meditate, he used to think over. And then I ultimately, considering all the three reports, uh, Khosla Commission, Mukherjee Commission, and Sahai Commission, I recorded a finding on page 250 to 255 that he was none other than Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
And up to which year this Gurnami Papa was heard?
He died on 16 September 1985.
85.
Huh. And
So,
he was cremated after informing the Calcutta people. When they didn't turn up, then dead body was cremated on 18 September 1985. So on his grave, his date of birth of Guru Nami Baba is mentioned at 23rd January 1985. No, 1897. 1897. So ultimately, I reached the conclusion, and findings are recorded on page 250.
one question comes to mind,
Huh,
that why Gurnami Baba kept himself hidden
huh,
for almost 38 years after independence.
huh.
Why he himself hid himself?
He hid himself for the reason that his purpose was to keep the country free from the British regime. He was a war criminal of the British. Even Nehru has written a letter to the British government somewhere in 1950s that your war criminal is in Russia. So from Japan, he had escaped to Russia. You remember when Lal Bahadur Shastri had gone to Tashkent for agreement with the Pakistan people. It was reported that he was telling the countrymen that he would bring a peace for which they were waiting and which they had never seen after 45. And the gathering of Netaji, of Lal Bahadur Shastri shows that a person of the same uh, face was standing there, which was the face of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Or and Netaji came to India somewhere in 1960s,
Oh,
and then earlier he had settled somewhere else. Then he came to this uh, Faizabad or Ayodhya. So his Gupkar grave name is given Gupkar, and the date of birth of Gumnami Baba is 23rd January 1897. So this is what
And when Netaji declared the provincial government, what constitution or idea he floated about free India?
he had, I think, framed the constitution also, and he had declared himself as the foreign minister as well as the prime minister of the provincial government. So that was created by and it was endorsed by the Japanese prime minister also. Many countries had acknowledged this government as the real government of provisional government. It was real government of India. So, but when the British people, they came in power after throwing bombs on Japan. So therefore that status came to an end. But in Japan, when he had come to Andaman in 1939, he had declared the Andaman island to be called as Shaheed Island and Nicobar Island as Swaraj Islands. He had given these slogans and they sang the song of Jan Gan Man at this place, Nicobar Island.
And is there any monument in the name of Subhash Chandra Bose?
Is there any?
Monument in India in the name of Subhash Chandra Bose?
I couldn't follow.
Is there any monument in the name of Subhash Chandra Bose in India?
Monument. Recently has been installed by Prime Minister Modi at India Gate.
Acha, India. Okay. Yes. Recently, yes.
Earlier it was installed as a hologram, which was raised. Now it is a permanent canopy below the canopy, and that Netaji Subhash Bose is there. It was also there in Nicobar, Andaman Island also.
And he has also declared Rajpath as Kartavya Path.
Yes.
So yes. Netaji and Kartavya Path are they related?
Are they related?
No,
not related. He only wanted to finish the Rajpath. Rajpath means the people who are ruling the country will go on this path. So he said, now this is given by this name is given by the British. We will abolish it.